The nature of reality. Everything you experience is fake. Once, in the time of the Buddha, there were some monks who were going to go to a part of India where no monks had ever gone before. They went to say goodbye to the Buddha and pay their respects. He said, "Have you paid your respects to Sariputta?" They hadn't, so he recommended that they do. So they went and paid their respects. He asked them, when someone there asks you, "What does your teacher teach?" What are you going to say? They said, "We'd come from a long way to hear what you would say." So he started with an interesting sentence. He said, "Our teacher teaches the subduing of desire and passion, Chandaraga." Then he went on to say that because the people in that area are intelligent, the next question they would ask would be, desire and passion for what? That shows the difference between people then and people now. Most people now, on hearing about the subduing of desire and passion, would change the channel, switch to another window on their iPad. But if you're intelligent, you'd want to know the ending of desire and passion for what? Sariputta provided the answer. Desire and passion for the five aggregates: form, feeling, perceptions, fabrications, consciousness. Then the next question those people would ask would be, why? And the answer is that if you haven't abandoned desire and passion for those things, then when they change, there's going to be sorrow and lamentation. But if you have abandoned desire and passion, then when those things change, there won't be any sorrow and lamentation at all. When Sariputta went on to say that if by abandoning unskillful qualities you met with pain and suffering, both short-term and long-term, then the Buddha wouldn't have taught to abandon unskillful qualities. And if by developing skillful qualities you wouldn't experience ease in the present and long-term happiness, then the Buddha wouldn't have taught that either. This tells you something about the Buddha's motivation in teaching. His motivation is for the sake of happiness. In fact, he talks often about how the abandoning of desire and passion is the ending of a fetter. We're bound to the things we desire, so they make us suffer. When he talked about what to abandon with regard to things that are inconstant, stressful, and not self, he'd say desire and passion. So you're not abandoning the five aggregates. You're abandoning your desire and passion for them. This goes very much against the grain. After all, we like our passions. We like our desires. That's why we're passionate about them, why we desire them. But the issue goes deeper than that. As the Buddha said, all phenomena are rooted in desire. All our experience of things with the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, all our experience of the five aggregates is rooted in desire. And the Buddha wants us to put an end to that desire. So it goes very much against the grain, which means that if we're sitting here meditating, we're not simply following our innate nature or allowing our innate nature to unfold and express itself, reveal itself. There are a lot of things in the practice that are going to go against the grain, which means we have to train ourselves. A large part of that training depends on the Buddha and the words we've learned from him, the words we've learned from the Ajahns. As the Buddha said, the whole of the holy life is admirable friendship. That doesn't mean that our admirable friends will do the work for us. It's simply that our admirable friends show us, through their qualities of discernment, virtue, relinquishment, and conviction, that these things are possible and they can lead to genuine happiness, a happiness that we might not have imagined otherwise. So we depend on them to open these possibilities to us. But at the same time, we have to be up for the task. We have to bring qualities that will enable us to take on a training like this. Some of these qualities we all have. As the Buddha said, for everyone, the principle of causality is that what you're experiencing right now is a combination of three things: the results of past actions, your current actions, and the results of your current actions. If causality didn't work in this way, then you wouldn't be able to learn from your own experience. If everything were totally determined from the past, what would you learn? You'd just be experiencing the result of something that you most likely couldn't remember. But the fact that some of the things you're experiencing right now come from what you're doing right now means that you can experiment and learn from your experiments. As with your breath, you can breathe in a long way or short way, fast, slow, heavy, light, deep, shallow, or any combination of those, and you'll see results. Then you can decide, based on those results, which combination is best. That's how you learn. Another quality you bring with you is the fact that the mind is luminous. Sometimes that's interpreted as meaning that the mind is innately pure. But the Buddha never said that. He says it's because the mind is luminous that it can be trained. In other words, you can train your own mind because you can watch what's going on in your mind. You can see what's going on in your mind in terms of your actions and the results. Things we tend to ignore. But that luminous quality, that quality of knowing what's going on, allows us to see what we're doing that's skillful, what's unskillful, and we can make changes, try things out. Those qualities we all have. But the Buddha asked for more. As he said, let someone come who is honest and observant, and I'll teach that person the Dhamma. Through your honesty and powers of observation, you're taking advantage of this luminous quality of the mind, and you're learning to bring your powers of observation inward. The honesty, of course, is needed, because when you want to learn something, you have to be honest about what you did and what the results are. Without that quality of honesty, how would you learn? You'd come up with all kinds of theories, unrelated to what's actually happening, unrelated to the results of what you're doing. So, these are the qualities the Buddha asks that you bring: honesty and the ability to be observant. Then he recommends how you train them. Those instructions to Rahula when Rahula was 7 are a primary example of how you develop your honesty and your powers of observation. They're also an example of how the Buddha would motivate you to want to take on this training to begin with. You probably know the story. Rahula sees the Buddha coming in the distance, so he sets out a jar of water with a dipper. The Buddha takes the water in the dipper, washes his feet, leaves a little bit of water in the dipper, and asks Rahula, "Do you see how little water there is there?" Rahula says, "Yes." The Buddha says, "That's how little of the quality of a contemplative there is in someone who tells a deliberate lie with no sense of shame." Rahula may have told a lie that day, so you can imagine how he felt. Then the Buddha takes the water and throws it away. He says, "Do you see how that water has been thrown away?" Yes. That's what happens to the quality of a contemplative in a person who tells a deliberate lie with no sense of shame. It gets thrown away just like that. Then he says, "See how empty this dipper is?" Yes, yes, yes. Then he turns the dipper upside down. See how it's turned upside down? Yes, he's trying to incite in Rahula the desire to be a good contemplative and to develop the quality of honesty, regardless of how much he might have wanted to tell lies. What all of this comes down to is that we've got to train ourselves. There's a lot that needs to be changed inside. We're not here just to accept or just to be equanimous about what arises. We have to change our attitudes and develop good qualities in their place. When the Buddha taught Rahula how to be observant, he said, "Observe your intentions. If you anticipate that an intention, if you followed it, would lead to any harm for yourself or others, don't follow it." The way he phrases the initial question is, "This intention that I want to act on, what would be the results?" There's an I there, and it plays an important role. After all, if you're self-training, you have to have a clear sense of your being responsible for what you're doing and responsible for changing what you're doing. If you don't anticipate any harm, you go ahead and do the action. While you're doing it, you watch the results. And if, while you're doing it, some bad results come up, harming yourself or others, you stop. And again, the question starts. This action that I'm doing, you're responsible for what you're doing. If you don't see any harm, you continue with the action until it's done, and then you look at the long-term results. Then the question is, this action that I have done, did it cause any harm? If you see that it caused harm, you go talk it over with someone else more advanced on the path, and you develop a sense of shame around what you've done. Shame, not in the debilitating sense that you're a bad person, but simply in the sense that that action was beneath you. Then you learn from this other person, who is more advanced on the path, as to how you might avoid that harm in the future. If you don't see that you caused any harm, then you take delight in the fact that your training is progressing, and you keep on training. This, the Buddha said, is how you purify yourself, and how everybody who has purified themselves has done it, through repeated reflection like this. So here, he's teaching you how to be observant and what to be observant about. Your intentions, your actions, and their results. That's where you're going to learn how to put an end to desire and passion. You begin to see that by acting on certain desires and passions, you're creating harm, so you stop. As Ajahn Lee would put it, you learn how to abandon what's unskillful and develop what's skillful. And then you finally move on to abandoning even what's skillful. A lot of us want to go right to the end and say, well, I'll just abandon all actions, abandon all sense that I'm doing anything. That aborts the process. There are stages you have to go through, that you have to be responsible for. You have to learn how to develop skillful qualities and abandon unskillful ones, because this is how you learn about desire and passion. You realize that some of your desires and passions really are harmful, so you want to go beyond them. The desire to go beyond them is not something to be abandoned right away. You develop it. So you learn about desire, and passion by developing good desires and passions and abandoning bad ones. Like right now, as you're getting the mind into concentration, there will be thoughts that come up that wander away from the breath. For the time being, nothing but thoughts about the breath are relevant. So, with any desires that would pull you away from the breath, you've got to say no. It's in saying no that you learn about them. The Buddha gives the example of using mindfulness to cut off your unskillful thoughts. As he says, mindfulness on its own doesn't totally cut them off. Mindfulness is like building a dam. It stops these things. Then the current is cut with discernment. But first, you've got to learn how to say no. You've got to learn how to stop them, because in learning how to stop them, you learn a lot about their tricks. After all, our desires and passions go so deep that they create our sense of who we are, of what's been important in our lives. They're not going to go away easily. They're going to find their ways of insinuating themselves into your practice, like the idea that we're not here to put an end to our cravings. We're here just to watch them and accept them. That's your cravings talking to you. That's cravings' version of the Dhamma. So you've got to be careful. You've got to learn how to say no and see what those cravings do. In the same way that building a dam across the river teaches you an awful lot about the currents that go under the surface of the river, saying no to unskillful desires teaches you a lot about the undercover currents of the mind. Right now, we're training ourselves. We're taking sides inside. We're taking that determination to find the true happiness that comes when our desires and passions no longer rule our lives. And we're going to make that determination foremost. With any other desires that go against that, we say no. The Buddha sets out the proper determination. The determination for discernment, the determination for truth, the determination for relinquishment, and the determination for calm. Let desires for these things take charge, which means that there will be conflict in the mind as you practice. But it's conflict for a purpose. It's a conflict from which you're going to learn. It's all about training, all about learning. After all, the Buddha called his teachings at one point the triple training. Training in heightened virtue, heightened mind, and heightened discernment. He wasn't just setting out a view of reality that people would assent to or object to or argue with. He was setting out ways of thinking, ways of talking, ways of acting that would be helpful in training the mind in the right direction, to free it. I had a Zoom meeting this afternoon, and that was one of the questions that came up. When the Buddha teaches dependent co-arising, it seems like he has different ways of explaining it. My response was, yes, that's true. He's not here to say that there's only one way of understanding reality that's in line with reality. There are lots of different ways of thinking about what you're doing, understanding what you're doing, so that you can counteract the desire and passion that would make you suffer. He's like a teacher who sees that some ways of explaining, say mathematics, would work for some people, but other ways would work for other people. He doesn't force one way on everybody. He has lots of different approaches to offer. They're all ways of thinking that take you somewhere, to the point where you don't have to think or say or do anything at all. The goal is that radical lay goal, where everything gets taken apart. To get there, you may require the 7 factors for awakening. You may require the noble 8-fold path, the 4 bases for success. Lots of different ways of understanding what you're doing. So see what works. You may decide that one method makes a lot of sense to you, but after putting it into practice, it may not. Well, there are alternative ways. The important thing is that you really learn to be honest. You really learn to be observant. Those 2 qualities are going to see you through. Without those 2 qualities, you can't train yourself. With those 2 qualities, the training has a chance of succeeding. The basic pattern. The passage in the canon where the Buddha is teaching his 7-year-old son is one that bears frequent reading, frequent reflection, because it contains a lot of the really basic principles of the practice. Basic not in the sense of Buddhism for dummies. Basic in the sense of containing the essential pattern of all the teachings. You can look at these instructions as the Buddha's introduction to meditation practice, because meditation doesn't start on this cushion. It starts in your daily life. The Pali word for meditation, bhavana, means to develop good qualities in the mind. And it's important to look at the qualities that the Buddha's recommending that his son develop. The discourse starts with a passage on truthfulness. You get the feeling that his son, Rahula, probably lied during the day. When the Buddha comes to see him that evening, Rahula sees him in the distance and sets out some water for washing the feet. As the Buddha washes his feet with the water, he leaves a little bit of water in the dipper. He shows the little bit of water to Rahula and says, "See how little water there is in this dipper?" Rahula says, "Yes, sir." The Buddha says, "That's how little goodness there is in a person who feels no shame at telling a deliberate lie." You can imagine Rahula cringing. Then the Buddha throws the water away and says, "See how that water is thrown away?" Rahula says, "Yes." That's what happens to the goodness of a person who feels no shame at telling a deliberate lie. It gets thrown away like that. The Buddha then turns the dipper upside down and then shows him how empty and hollow it is, each time with the same message. That when you feel no shame at telling a deliberate lie, your goodness gets turned upside down and is empty and hollow. So what the Buddha is establishing here is the principle of truthfulness, that you're honest about what you do. And this means being honest not only with other people, but also with yourself. Honest about what? The rest of the discourse goes on to point out that you're honest about your actions. Before you act, while you're acting, and after you've acted. Take a good close look at what you're planning to do, what you're doing, and what you've done. Before you do it, look at your intention. This act you're planning to do, what result do you expect from it? Are the results you expect going to cause any harm? If they are, don't do it. So, there's an important principle right there, that your intentions are important. The consequences of your actions are important, and you want to act in a way that doesn't harm anybody. This is the beginning of compassion. While you're acting, and this covers not only physical actions, but also the things you say, and even the things you think. Look at the results that are happening while you're still engaged in the action. Sometimes things happen that you didn't expect. If there's any unexpected harm, stop. If you don't see any unexpected harm, you can continue with the action. When you're done, reflect on the results your actions have had over time. If you see any unexpected harm, then if it was a verbal or physical action, go and confess it to somebody else who's had experience on the path. Get advice from that person. If it was simply a mental action, the Buddha says to develop a sense of distaste for that action. You don't want to think in those ways ever again. This establishes the principle that you shouldn't be ashamed or try to hide the results of your actions from other people. You should be open about your mistakes. If you can be open about your mistakes with other people, it's a lot easier to start being open about them with yourself. At the same time, you learn from the wisdom of other people. The Buddha doesn't recommend that you reinvent the Dhamma wheel every time you act. If, however, you notice that there was no harm from your actions, the Buddha says, take joy in your practice and continue with the training. There are a lot of important principles here. The principle of truthfulness and integrity, the principle of compassion. These things are essential to the practice. Even the Buddha's most refined teachings on the topic of emptiness follow this same pattern. Get your mind in a state of concentration and then look at it. Don't make assumptions about what it is, but just look at the intention, maintaining that state of concentration. See where there's any disturbance in it. Appreciate where there's a lack of disturbance. Lack of disturbance here corresponds to a lack of harm. The disturbance can be equated with harm on a very subtle level. But the important thing is that you look at your meditation in terms of action and result. All too often, when people reach, say, a sense of infinite consciousness, they slip off and identify with the infinite consciousness as their true being, or the ground of being from which all things come and to which they all return. They make all sorts of assumptions based on that perception. Or they can go into the state of non-perception, where there's nothing there at all, and make assumptions based on that, forgetting to look at the fact that the state of concentration was something they did, and now they're experiencing the results. Like any other action, the concentration has to be viewed as an action and judged by its results. So whatever level of practice you're on, whether it's simply day-to-day interactions with other people or working directly with your mind, this is the pattern the Buddha has you adopt all the time. Look at your intentions, look at your actions, look at their results, and then adjust things based on what harm you see your actions have done. If you see that the results aren't as good as you'd like, go back and look at the intention, change the action. This requires two principles: integrity and compassion. These are the basic Buddhist values. These are the basic values of the practice, and they can be applied at any level, among students in a classroom, or just interacting with other people in general, or as you're sitting here meditating. Remember, you're doing something. The principle of karma, which is the Buddha's basic teaching, underlies everything, reminding you that your actions are important, that they do have consequences, and that you have the freedom to change the way you act. If you see that the consequences are causing harm, causing suffering, you can change the way you act. You have that freedom. You can learn from your mistakes. After all, the Buddha himself started out making a lot of mistakes in his practice. All those years of self-affliction, extreme austerities, 6 years of a big mistake. And imagine the pride that went along with that. He was able to do without all kinds of pleasures, all kinds of comforts. He practically starved himself to death. He held his breath until he went unconscious. He ate so little food that just with the effort of urinating or defecating, he would fall over. He was so weak and thin. And in a case like that, what keeps you going? Usually, a strong sense of pride. You can do without things other people can't do without. But finally, the Buddha was able to overcome his pride and realize that there was something wrong with what he was doing. This couldn't be the right way. There had to be another way. And he totally changed his understanding of the practice. Totally changed the way he practiced. As a result, he was able to find the way out of suffering. So, as we practice in our imperfect ways, it's good to remind ourselves that the Buddha himself started out imperfect as well. As we make mistakes, it's good to remind ourselves that the Buddha made mistakes too. But he also pointed the way out of your mistakes. You can change the way you act, and it's important that you do, because your actions shape your life. The pleasure and pain you experience in life comes from your actions, not from anything you innately are. So when you notice that there are problems in your life, look here at what you're doing. What are your intentions? What are your actions? What can you change? This requires that you be very honest with yourself, that you have the integrity to admit your mistakes, to see the connection between your intentions and the results of your actions, and the compassion, both for yourself and the people around you, not to want to cause harm. Once you've developed this integrity in your day-to-day life, then it's a lot easier to bring the integrity into your meditation. Because integrity lies at the basis of meditating well too. This is why the precepts are so important. They develop this quality of integrity. If you can't be honest with yourself on the blatant level, then it's very hard to be honest with yourself on the subtle level of the practice. So it's good to keep reflecting on those instructions to Rahula, because they focus on the basic principle that underlies everything in the practice. Your actions are important, so be very careful. At the end of the Buddha's teaching career, he closed with the words, "Bring your practice to completion through heedfulness." What does it mean to be heedful? It means that you have to be very careful about what you do, because what you do does make a difference, and it does make a difference to be heedful. If everything were totally predetermined by some principle of fate or ironclad causality, nothing would make any difference at all, and the Buddha wouldn't have had any reason to teach. Or, if your actions didn't really make a difference, there would be no reason to be heedful. But they do make a difference, and the care you take in looking at your intentions and looking at the results of your actions, that's what determines whether you'll be able to complete the path or not. So when you're looking for a Buddhist principle to apply in all areas, this is it. Be careful about what you do, Be heedful about what you do because it makes an important difference in your life.